Alright, get your nerd hats on, folks. I've got a brand new camera. Now, before I show you what it is, this video won't just be an unboxing video. I want to talk you through my process about why I picked this one over the other two that were on my list. I think this is really important. Now, in my last podcast video, I spoke about why you should always buy gear with intention, why you should always have a project in mind to use that gear for, and then also completing the project, which is something I do a lot of. So I usually have like a grand plan of doing something, and then I gradually work my way up to it and complete that project. There's been a few times where stuff hasn't worked out or I've let projects go, but it's very infrequent these days. And this will get used as of tomorrow. So I'll open it up, I'll show you what it is, and then I'll walk you through why I picked this one over the other two cameras that were on the list. And it's not to say that the other two cameras are bad, but this one definitely made the most sense. And I can't do this any other way. I wanted to save the unboxing until the end, but it's really hard to talk about it without sort of giving it away. So let's get into it. Now, as you can see from the box here, this is from Amazon. This video is not sponsored or anything like that. And I ended up getting one of these. So here it is. I got another LUMIX S9. Now, I was on the fence between a second S5 Mark II X or a second GH7. And I ended up going for this. This made the most sense for me. And now that I've showed you what it is, let me just show you the color and then we'll get stuck into this list. I haven't actually seen this one in person since Japan, when I was over there for the release of this thing. Oh, I just ripped the box. That's all right. Let's have a look. Ooh, yeah. There it is. So this is the black with the silver trim, and the small rig grip is on its way. It comes, I think, in a day or two from now. But yeah, this looks great. Kind of reminds me of my old Sony A7C in terms of aesthetics. I dig it. Now that you know I've got the S9, let me show you my chart and sort of justify the reasons why I went for this. Now, first up, the price of this camera was way more affordable. This was $1,000 less expensive than the GH7 and about $800 or $900 cheaper than the S5 Mark II X. And I also feel far better about traveling with cameras like this over way more expensive cameras. I've done that before. I traveled with the FX3 and A7S III, and I didn't like leaving my camera bag anywhere that I wasn't. I've said that many times, but it's true. I hated having such expensive equipment with me when I traveled. So for me, this kind of puts my mind at ease to some extent over traveling with a far more expensive camera. And that's just one of those things that might make sense to you or it won't. But for me personally, the less expensive the gear is when I travel, the better I feel overall. Reason number two I went for the S9 is it's very small and light. And this is a really important thing for me personally. Now, I did the math, which I don't often do, but I can get 3 of these in my camera bag. 3 full frame cameras, and it only weighs 1.48 kilograms. To do the same thing with the S5 Mark II X, it would weigh 2.2. To do the same thing again with the GH7 would be 2.415. So it's an extra kilogram there in my carry-on. So I now have more space for other things. Now you might be saying, hey, with Micro Four Thirds, the lenses are smaller. I absolutely agree, but the camera bodies aren't. And I can line 2 of these up with the same physical footprint of the grip on an S5 Mark II X. So these are much, much smaller, which I really like. So it was a no-brainer for travel purposes. Now let's talk about a couple of the other reasons why the S9 got the win here for this multi-camera setup, and then we'll get into some of its disadvantages as well. I always like to keep these balanced, but this has great low light performance. You know, I've tested this out enough on my travels to know that it works beautifully. Now I'll be shooting indoors sometimes without proper lighting. So having a full frame sensor allows me not to have to worry about, you know, cranking up the ISO and getting a noisy image. It just looks great. So this is a very usable image up to about 8,000 ISO, which is killer. Now we also get a decent screen. It might not be the best touch screen in the business, but the fact I can turn up the brightness and see it in almost any shooting scenario makes this a really great choice. The battery life of the S9 is also much better than the GH7 and also slightly better than the S5 Mark II X because we don't have active cooling. Now, active cooling is a thing that some people can't live without, but again, for the kind of shooting situations I'll be in, that's not a problem. So for me, battery life is really important. Let's talk about a few of the improved video modes on the S9 that I prefer over both the GH7 and the S5 Mark II and X, the first of which is the S&Q mode. I love having an S&Q mode on the dial. It's great. This will do 4K 60 with an APS-C crop, but it's still got phase hybrid autofocus, which is something that the S5 Mark II X can't do. It defaults back to contrast DFD. if I'm shooting 1080p up to 100 frames per second, I've still got phase hybrid autofocus, so this definitely gets the win. I don't love the variable frame rate mode on the GH7. I wish one day that would just have an S&Q mode, but it is what it is. The image quality out of the GH7 is still great, but I just love how easy this is to use, because if you just want to put it on autopilot and let the autofocus do the work, this definitely gets the win. VFR mode on the GH7 has no autofocus. You're kind of limited to manually focusing all of the time. And if I'm not directly behind the camera and someone else is, I just want it to work. Sometimes I like to shoot my A-roll in 1080p at 50 or 60 frames per second. I do that a lot on the channel lately. And this still gives you phase hybrid autofocus with full tracking, which is something that the S5 Mark IIX can't do. So this is a better camera for shooting in those frame rates, provided you don't need to let it run all day. At the end of the day, the biggest reason why the S9 makes the most sense is not only price, but I already have a couple of these cameras, and working in a multi-camera setup, it's really handy to have matching camera bodies. It sort of takes the complication out of everything. If I set one camera up the way that I like it, I can then copy and paste those settings over to the next two cameras thanks to the save restore feature via the SD card. So that's really cool. The color science will match, all that kind of stuff, and it will save me having to buy an additional camera down the track. Now, if I am pairing this with an S5 Mark II or X, the color science is matching, so there's no problems doing that either. So I thought, yeah, this is definitely the right choice for me. But I'm going to talk a little bit more now about some of the trade-offs with this camera so I don't get the wrong impression. So here we go. All right, let's talk about a few of the compromises with the S9 and why you might want to purchase the GH7 or S5 Mark IIX. So if you're going to be shooting outside in the sun and you need active cooling, don't buy an S9. Although this is pretty robust up to about 24 degrees Celsius. I actually shot my S5 Mark IIX review with this in Hawaii without it overheating. It's definitely not as robust, obviously, as a camera with active cooling. So the X and GH7 are bulletproof in hot conditions. Secondly, the S5 Mark IIX and GH7 have two media card bays in each camera. They're slightly different. So the GH7 has a CF Express Type B card slot and a standard UHS-2 SD card slot. The S5 Mark IIX will give you two SD card slots. This only has one. So if you want to record to two cards at the same time and back up as you go, then this won't be the right choice. The GH7 also gets the win when it comes to its physical design. I love the fact it has that flip out turnaround screen that can also flip out. We get tally lamps on the front so you know when you're recording. That's just a really great thing, and you don't find that on the S9 or on the S5 Mark IIX. We could also say the GH7 also gets the win here when it comes to its features is that it can shoot 4K at 120 frames per second with no additional crop, whereas the S9 S5 Mark IIX can only do 4K 60 with an APS-C crop. The APS-C crop is slightly bigger than that of Micro Four Thirds anyway, so you can make your mind up whether or not that's a huge problem for you. For me, I couldn't care less. I just shoot and create stuff. But that's just me. At the end of the day, I went for the camera that was the best bang for buck in terms of performance and also in terms of portability, which were the most important things for me. And again, everybody's situation is different. So these charts really opened my eyes to what I actually needed, and I saved myself some money by going for this as opposed to either of the other two cameras. And it's also much lighter, so it's a win-win for me. Now, what I'm going to do coming up is share with you the end result of this multi-camera setup, and then eventually when I go overseas and do that as well, I'll share that with you. But yeah, I can't wait to see what kind of results we get as of tomorrow, as of shooting this. So it's new camera day here. Anyway, thanks for watching. My name's Shane. I will catch you on the next one. See ya.